What is up? My name is Cierra and welcome to my channel. I don't see these books talked about anywhere online, so I'm going to talk about them here. The first book on my list is The Brief Wondrous Life of Oscar Wilde by Junot Diaz, and I feel like this book is absolutely amazing, and I feel like it needs to definitely be talked about more. Let me tell you why. So this story follows our main character, Oscar Wilde, who has a very tough life. Like, I remember reading, let me backtrack that. I read this book back in college. I believe it was in my second year, and this book was just truly amazing. This was the first time I actually read a book when I was told to read a book, and I actually listened. I'm glad that I followed my gut and listened and actually read it, because not only is it college and you gotta pay for that class, so it's not free to just fuck around. You actually have to contribute. So I contributed because that shit is not cheap. Oscar is a sweet but disastrously overweight ghetto nerd, a New Jersey romantic who dreams of becoming the Dominican J.R.R. Tolkien, and most of all, finding love. But Oscar may never get what he wants. Blame the Fuku, a curse that has haunted his family for generations, following them on their epic journey from the Dominican Republic to the US and back again. From what I remember in the story, Oscar was just a very depressed kid. He did have the dream of becoming a writer, but he was just really depressed and going through a lot in his family and the curse that plagues his family. So it was a lot of turmoil for him, a lot of turmoil for his family, and he just never got any relief from it. But he did at least try to with having dreams or just like daydreaming in general, but it still wasn't enough to make him feel better. So I feel like I really connected with Oscar when it's just like having the hopes and the dreams, even though there's a lot around you that's pulling you down. And a lot of the times that stuff pulling you down is doing a lot better and has a lot more strength than you having the hope. So it kind of feels like you're wrestling somebody who is twice your weight, and they're constantly beating you up, pulling you down, smacking you around, and you just hope. You pray that, oh, if I just do this, I can win. But in the end, he did not win in the game of life and everything in general. It was a very moving story. I feel like everyone should read this book at least once. I'm just saying. But Junot's work is just really good. It's really good. I have his other work here too, and I just really like the way he tells a story. I love the characters. You can really like sympathize and empathize with Oscar, and even just like realize like there is aspects of your life that you have been through that are very similar to Oscar. It may not be the exact same thing, but still, it's just the ability to put yourself in the story. You may take out some of the context in certain situations that don't relate to you, but if you put what you go through in here, it's very much like, wow, how can I deal with this as a person? And Oscar dealt with the things that he's dealt with, and he didn't make it to living a fulfilled life. So it's very much like a lot of reflection, and really just you get to see what it's like for the family as they struggle within each other, and how they kind of like overlook Oscar. They overlook what he's going through, what he's feeling on the inside. No one really talks to him about his feelings deeply. So it's kind of like he went under the radar. And so when, obviously because it's a brief life, so when he does ultimately, it's very shocking to everybody. And I feel like that's what a lot of it kind of relates to today when it comes to people, when they realize why certain family members themselves, Next up on the list is Conjured by Sarah Beth Durst. And this book follows our main character, Eve, who doesn't remember her life before, but she has dreams of certain situations that may have happened in her life, but she has no memory of like what it actually means or what actually happened. I feel like this book is vastly underhyped. I don't see anyone talk about it. I absolutely love it. I love the characters. I love Eve. I love the magical elements in it. And then when you learn about her secret and you learn about her identity, it's even more wild than the stuff beforehand. Like, it gets so twisted and so interesting really quick. And I would love to see this as a movie. I feel like it'll be very intricate and very magical. It kind of reminds me of like American Horror Story, you know, the circus season, but minus the gruesome stuff, obviously. But still, it has a lot of those elements to me in the book. It's very much so like just out of this world. Like, you would never expect this in the story, and I highly, highly, highly recommend it for anyone who just really likes magic, or at least some magical realism in it, and it really doesn't have to do with too much heaviness and world diving into like as much as like Harry Potter or any other fantasy type of book. It very much just gives you enough to be enticed into wanting to know more about Eve and where she comes from. Because when I tell you, when you find out where she comes from, you're going to be extremely shocked, because I was, and I really just want to see it like in a movie. Like, I want to see like what they would do and how they would use graphics to create the world that she's from, because it was so good. I highly recommend it. It's so fucking good. Next up is 101 Secrets for Your 20s by Paul Angone. Angone. I think it's Angone. But these tips are extremely helpful in your 20s. Like, I feel like during the time, the earliest in my 20s, because I graduated and then the pandemic hit. It was freaking wild. I graduated in 2018 from college, and then 2020, you know, everything just in the world just went crazy. And there was a lot of isolation, a lot of times where I felt extremely depressed and alone. And I feel like this book single-handedly actually helped me through the most difficult years, because God, I needed it. I couldn't get a job. The only work I could get was babysitting, and it wasn't something I was passionate about. It was just something that I was good at, but I didn't want to do it anymore. And I felt very much stuck because I moved back to the city from the school that I went to. I was back in a world that I didn't want to be part of. I was completely isolated. It just didn't feel good at all. And I feel like these secrets from Paul really just like helped me not feel as alone. And it actually even encouraged me to reach out to my friends more. And then we start to talk about like, nah, we're all suffering too. So it very much like kind of reinvigorated and just brought back to life our connections, because it was just such an isolating time. It was extremely depressing. It just wasn't a good time. And even now, especially from what I've experienced working in childcare and moving forward into a field that I actually want to be in, I feel like it's still extremely helpful, especially when it comes to the secrets about work and work life, work balance, and also just going through different phases and different fields. I feel like all of this is still extremely relevant, and I highly recommend everyone in their 20s to run and go get this book, because it's like talking to a best friend. It's not so much of like, if I did it, you can do it too. You know, trying to be like extremely overly positive. And that's not what I like in my nonfiction books. Like, I don't like that. I don't do books that try to tell you how to be better by trying to be like just like toxic positivity. Like, I don't rock with that. Like, this is extremely real, and he writes exactly like, I feel like how he would talk to you if you were sitting with him. I'm just gonna go ahead and read one. This is secret number 35. Obsessive comparison disorder is the smallpox of our generation. 9 out of 10 doctors agree this disorder is the leading cause to eating 2 boxes of Girl Scout cookies while watching The Bachelor. So what exactly is obsessive comparison disorder? And more importantly, is there a cure? I feel like that is so relatable, because it's just like, not only are we always comparing ourselves to each other, we're always comparing ourselves to like even people on freaking TV. Like, you're watching The Bachelor, you're watching Love Island, you're watching all of these shows, all these reality shows, because there's so many of them. And it's so hard not to compare yourselves to them, especially if they're young and they're rich and you're not. And it's like, it's really hard to kind of like look inward and reflect on your life and just know that that's not for everybody. And even for those people that are in the spotlight, what it took to get there isn't the same for everybody else. And sometimes it actually goes downhill for a lot of people, because at that point in time, they're going through a lot in the background that we don't know. And it just, everything just blows up and they shut down. And there's just a lot of different factors that we don't consider when we're comparing ourselves with everyone else on this earth, because we all do it. It's extremely impossible not to do it. So it feels like very comforting to know that, like, hey, it's relatable, not only in a sense of like we do it daily, but like even if you're just sitting there watching TV, you're immediately comparing yourself to people on TV, or people who are, part of the hustle culture. They're like, I'm up and grinding at 5 a.m. What are you doing? It's like, I don't need that. Like, I need to sleep in. I don't need to have someone in my face telling me I need to grind 24/7 when I can't. But we have no choice but to compare ourselves to that, because it's in our face all the time. Next up is China Room by Sunjeev Sahota. And so this one follows our main character, Mahar. She is a young bride in Punjab, and it really follows her life as a wife. And at this time in, was it the 1930s? In the 1930s, probably still to this day too, the wives didn't see their husbands' faces. So Mahar's face is covered all the time, and she doesn't look men in the eye. She doesn't look at her husband in the eye. And so she goes to the house, and so they live in a room. They call it the China Room because it's like behind the china cabinet, with two other wives there, and they're all married to the brothers there, but no one knows which one is their husband. And so this really follows her trying to navigate life as a wife, trying to figure out who her husband is, and some side plot along the way. I'm just gonna say that because it took me a minute to like understand it at first, but once I was able to navigate what was going on in the book, oh boy. I feel like it's an underrated book because I haven't seen it anywhere. I don't hear anybody talking about it. I feel like it's a really, really good book. I loved Mahar. She is literally like, she's going through it. Like, as you start to read it and you really become part of her journey, you know what's happening. And as you read each page of the people she's talking to, not only just the wives, but the men, I don't want to give it away, but it's very twisted, even for someone who can't even see her husband. And then up to the ending, you're still just like scratching your head. You're like, wait, what is happening? Because it's a lot of emotion and a lot of control, especially from the men's mom, because the mom is in control of the household. Essentially, she's in control of the wives, while the men kind of, do their manly thing and kind of like run the household. But really it's their mom that like picked the wives and made approval of the wives essentially too. So she's like the mom is very much an intricate part of this story. And as you read it and you start to understand more of her as a character, and along with the brothers too, because the brothers are doing some shady shit too. And it's very interesting because it's like, these women did not know what any of these men's faces look like. These men are really just like pulling strings along the way. But as they're like pulling strings, underlying stuff is happening that they don't know about. Like, emotions are out of whack. It's just crazy. and it isn't told in such an extravagant way, but it's a lot. And the last book on the list is The Girl with Stars in Her Eyes by Jo Axelrod. I think that's how you pronounce it. So this one follows our main character Tony, who is a singer, and so now she's meant to become part of a group, but the manager is an ex of hers, like an ex-friend, you know. And it's just a lot of tension really between them, because Sebastian like up and left her at a really vulnerable time type of thing, and said that he was gonna come back for her, and she's like, nah, you did it anyway, so you know, middle finger to you type of energy. And I feel like this book is underhyped. Maybe I wasn't part of the community when it was hyped, but I haven't seen any hype around it. This book came out, I think like it was in 2021, and even then I feel like One to Watch was really popular. I read that book already, I really like it, but I don't hear anything about this one, like not at all. I love the characters, I love their relationship, I love their dynamic of how they start to progress after dealing with what happened in the past. So to me, it's kind of like a second chance romance type of thing. It gives me that energy. And I also love the fact that she is like a self-made woman when it comes to being in the music industry. She worked extremely hard to get to where she is, and I just loved it. I was able to literally see exactly like where she was in her hometown when she was performing, like detail for detail. Like I can visualize everything about it. I just really loved it, and I feel like it deserves more hype, especially just like now. I don't know why. I just feel like now it needs a lot more hype. It's just a really good story. It's just so good. Maybe it's just me, but that's how I feel about this book. All right, that's it for this video. If you liked the video, be sure to like it. In the comments below, comment a book that you feel that is underhyped. And until next time.